Good morning, Fred. How are
Good
you?
morning, Anil. Very good. And you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I felt like today's a hoodie day.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
man.
like it.
Yeah. Gave myself a haircut yesterday, and now I'm like hoodie. Now I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
feeling a bit clean and ready to go for the week.
And is it Paris and Michael Jordan?
Yeah, man. Paris and Jordan. Paris
Mm-hmm.
loves Jordan. So
Yeah.
I had a great opportunity to go to an event. It was, man, it feels like ages ago, 2019, summer of 2019, and K54 is a massive event, and so I got this hoodie, and when I wear it, I just feel like it's like my Superman outfit. It's like I
Yeah, yeah.
love wearing it. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, man. Um, so today we're going to talk about architecture of an apology.
Yes.
Lots of words with A's in it. But I love it. And I
Mm-hmm.
kind of wanted to hand the mic to you and say, what are your thoughts on it, and where are we going to go with it today?
Yes, it's something I've been thinking about recently. I have both apologized and been offered an apology. So it made me think back to other times and when it's appropriate to apologize, what it means, how to do it right, and how you'll know if you did it right or not. So a few steps or like the architecture of it, just like the ring of that.
Cool. Man, that reminds me, when I was a kid, because I was just off the phone with my sister, and I'd be like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. At one point, she's like, do you know what sorry means? And I was like, what does it
Mm.
mean? Like, it means that you feel bad and you're not going to do it again. So if you keep doing it again and again, that sorry is going to start to lose a bit of the value. And I mean, she didn't use the word value, but she's like, it's going to lose a bit of its meaning, and
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
going to believe you as much
Hmm.
anymore. And I was like, okay. So yeah, as a 7, 8, 9 year old kid, and now chatting with you about it, however many years later, I love this. I think it's true. It's great to know those steps and kind of
Yeah, yeah.
when it's appropriate and when it's
And
maybe
I
not.
think that that's where it starts, right? When to apologize. And I feel like some people do that. They go around saying they're sorry all the time. And it's just a way to be very courteous, and considerate, and maybe to uh, give this share this feeling that they have something to be sorry for, that you know they might have done something wrong, almost like an insecurity.
Mhm.
And then some people never apologize.
It's quite the spectrum, hey?
It is, isn't it?
I
Yeah.
remember I was in Boston once. First time I was on the East Coast. I always heard that Bostonians are quite like tough, and I'm a guy from Colorado, so I'm easygoing, right? I bumped into this guy's shopping cart, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and he's like, "For what?" Didn't even look up, didn't even look at me,
Yeah,
just kind
yeah,
of like, for
yeah.
what? And I was like, all right, I guess I don't need to apologize here. No,
Yeah.
so it's kind of funny how, like, yeah, you will have
Mm.
that spectrum.
Yeah, yeah. I found kind of on that topic, in big cities like London and New York, people are courteous because it's so crowded. They know that you can't just run around and bump into people. And I found in some smaller cities that maybe have some little brother complex or want to be big cities. They think that in the big cities people just run all over each other. And then I go to New York and I find people surprisingly courteous. Haven't been to New York in ages, of course, but I remember that general sense. And similarly in London, it's this thing where two people apologize, and then someone said, "Well, why did you apologize? It wasn't your fault." And it's like, two people bump into each other, both people apologize, and both people move on. I think it's quite nice.
I mean, in my opinion, it's a fine balance. There's nothing wrong with apology, especially with a stranger. Oh,
Mm.
hey, I'm sorry about that. Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Because you think, if you don't hear that, you almost kind of like, oh, well, screw that guy. And then that kind of almost builds a bit of like negativity inside you. And then you bump into somebody
Mm-hmm.
else, negativity. And then suddenly somebody does something to you that's unrelated, and you just explode.
Yeah.
You wonder if that one word, 3, 4, however many steps ago, was whispered or said out loud. It could have like,
I,
prevented that.
I I think so. I think so. And that actually brings us to the reason I think we should apologize. It's that something stays with us in after a situation, in a relationship, that, and I gave this example with my children recently, that if I just turn around and kind of knock someone with my hand, I just say, "Oh, sorry," and it's no big deal because they know it wasn't intentional, so it doesn't require like the big apology. It was an accident, but I still noticed that I did something, And I just acknowledge that basically, and then we just pass. And there's no, the relationship hasn't been impaired. I think that's what it comes down to for me. So, I mean, what you're saying in public, it's not really a relationship, but it's still this sense of um, you haven't quite moved on. It's still with you that someone did something. Um, of course, it can be more or less inappropriate. I think it's more interesting to think about it in the context of relationships, where it's about, what can someone do that has that effect? Like it impairs the relationship. Someone is hurt, they feel they were lied to, cheated, a promise was broken. It's created some worry that something is going to happen again, as you said originally as well, right? That it's this thing of like, well, now I am worried that something is going to happen again. So the apology is about reassuring that it's not going to happen again, for example. So something happened, and at least one party feels that they've been wronged and they are owed an apology. Uh, and so I think that's the first step. That's the first part. And it's so sometimes, I think some people, they just have slightly shouty relationships and they just shout at each other, and it can genuinely be the case that neither party feels harmed by that. Just like, well, we're from this culture, we raise our voices, and if they were to introspect afterwards, they genuinely say that, yeah, that was nothing. Whereas someone, after being shouted at, might feel like, oh, that I didn't like that. I saw a side of you I didn't like. I felt like I had done something wrong when in fact I hadn't, or with some type of aggression, or I was worried how far the aggression was going to go, or something like that. Then there is something, there is some shit on the floor, or there is some impairment, or some worry that lingers, right? There's some frustration that lingers. So I think that's the distinction of when you then need to do something to repair that, to set that right. To Yeah.
No, so it's something like, so it's kind of like that. Step one is, if you have that relationship with someone and you feel that one has impaired or harmed that relationship and harmed that partner in that relationship, um, then that not necessarily requires an apology, but like an apology is due in
Mm-hmm.
order to almost kind of acknowledge, hey, I've broken that promise to you, or that I've obviously damaged the partnership. I've inflicted harm. I've inflicted pain. I
Mm-hmm.
want to acknowledge that, and I
Yep.
want to apologize for it, with the intent that I won't do it again, or I don't want to do it again. I hope I don't do it again.
Exactly. That's a fine nuance as well that I think we'll get to, because for me that's a slightly later part. Uh, but, but in the beginning, it has to be that, right? That something got a little bit off, and the person who's apologizing, first of all, they have to see, both people actually have to see what they did wrong, and it's not always easy, right?
Mhm.
Like I can be upset about something and I don't quite know why, and then maybe it's too soon to apologize. So there is something there where both people have to figure out if something really went wrong and if an apology is appropriate. Maybe I'm just a little bit upset and it's not really your fault. That can be an honest conclusion as well. That no, that thing you did, that's not really why I'm upset. I'm really upset about, all this other stuff, anything from loss of sleep to, some outcome that didn't go my way. And then it's also very unfair to expect someone else to take responsibility or to try to fix our emotions when they didn't um, cause the problem. Sure, you can make someone dinner and give them a massage. We're kind of in a relationship sphere now, but you probably shouldn't, come groveling and say that you did something wrong when in fact you haven't. I think that also seems a bit dysfunctional. So it's about, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I'm just, I'm processing that because I totally agree. You can imagine that. So my father, when I was younger, when I watched him argue with my mom, my father, when he'd get upset and he would like shut down. So it's almost like, is he really listening and hearing what's being said to him by my mom or by me or by my sister? And what he would do is, in order to kind of stop the conversation, it's like, you know what? I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry.
Mm,
You know what? Okay, I'm sorry. And you're like, but you're like, but wait, like that person's not asking for an apology. They actually want to be heard.
right.
They just
Yeah.
want to be listened to. So if
Mm-hmm.
you can understand, so I love how you say, two people, both parties need to see the wrong,
Mm.
and they need to understand the source of the wrong. And if the source of the wrong was one of the party, then apology is due. If the source wasn't actually either party, it's just something triggered, then maybe an apology is not necessary, but,
Yeah.
but just the opportunity to open up.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. And so
Continue. Yeah.
then you get to a situation where one party actually should apologize. And I think we've all had the situation of like or heard this. I'm sorry you feel that way, where the red lights go off, and it's like, no, you're not really apologizing. You just wish I didn't react to this mistake that you made, or this trust that you broke, or whatever it is. And then something has been missed in terms of the previous step and why we're apologizing. But there should be then a genuine admission of guilt or recognition or reflection of what I actually did wrong. I have to understand that. And I think in these first two steps, the ego plays a part, right? To say mistake is often unintentional. And so, you know, I'm kind of thinking of a business context. You don't execute everything perfectly, and you say, yeah, that didn't quite work out. We're going to do it differently next time. But you don't really have to apologize. But to consciously have done something wrong, then, it takes a lot to admit that I lied about something, or I reacted in a way that I realized was harmful, and that I need to, repair this. I think that takes a lot, but that in itself is such a huge part of it. As you said before, for someone to feel heard, where they just, at that point, it's almost, maybe before the actual apology, just feeling heard, just feeling understood.
Words are powerful. And when I hear the phrase, I'm sorry you feel that way, I interpret that as it's so condescending in a way. It's like, well,
Yeah,
I'm sorry you feel that way. And
yeah.
it's like, okay, so wait, what just happened here?
Mm-hmm.
So am I wrong for feeling how I feel? And so wait, is this actually, am I the cause of my pain? And it's funny because like we always talk about triggers and how we, as from a young age to old, like these triggers over time, they build and build.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone's saying that to you, it's almost like manipulative. They're pointing the finger back at you. It's like, yeah, even though they use the word in that sentence, it's not actually being directed,
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
said, as a genuine admission of fault. It's more of a finger point.
Yeah.
But what I really, again, just thinking about hearing what you're saying, it's almost like ideally there's an internal reflection on both
For
parties,
sure. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Just to understand, okay, so what did I say? What did I
Mhm.
mean? What did I do? Why did I do it?
Yeah.
Other person's doing the same thing. And then when they come back together, it's almost like, okay,
Yeah.
why? So that, and
Yeah.
that reflection, I think that the understanding is powerful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love how you said that, man. That's
And I'll give you just a couple. There are another couple of cop outs that I think are pretty funny. One is, so are you going to forgive me? Which is like preempting the whole process.
Yeah.
And just like hoping that the other person has done all the work for themselves, and that you're not going to apologize, but that they're still going to come around to forgiving you. And that's also a bit cheeky, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, or I think, gifts can have that function as well. It's almost like a gift can be the personal version of an out of court settlement, that the big companies do. And they say, with no admission of guilt, we pay this fine, right?
I love that. It's like, never thought I would ever go that way, but yeah. Yeah, we don't cause lung cancer, but here's a pack of cigarettes just as an apology. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Cool. Keep going, mate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So,
so
are you
again, I think
sorry?
that
Yeah,
that
Gibbs.
could be working in some relationships, but it could also be, you know, I'm a big believer in this idea of like sometimes there is shit on the floor and it needs to be cleaned up. We need to be very honest if, something has been impaired, if trust has been broken, or if something has gone wrong that is going to leave a scar or a mark. And sometimes we can genuinely just get over it, just shrug it off. but oftentimes it's still there. And if it's still there, we have to be honest about it. And as you said before, maybe it's just like processing on one side, or maybe it requires an apology. But to be honest about that, like a gift by itself is not going to cut it. And we'll come back to that later, because maybe there's it's about how these things are wrapped up and finished off. But the stage we're at now, I think it is about an admission of guilt, or a recognition of what went wrong, and to be honest about that, and not try to cop out, not try to fast forward, or jump over that step with an out of court settlement.
I love that. I mean, that said, I think now all the guys and girls listening out there who are like, wait, what about flowers? Because I feel like flowers are such a nice thing to do after an argument. There's nothing potentially wrong with a peace offering to help calm the waters. So once the waters are calmed, you can have that conversation. But you're right. Don't look at those flowers, that peace offering, as a resolution to the disagreement or to the situation.
Yeah.
You need to have, if anything, that the strength to kind of, okay, let's dig into this. Let's understand it. What happened and why? That settlement, it's not truly settled. The feelings are still hurt. So you need to dig in. Yeah. Cool, man. Love
Makes me think of something that Professor Scott Galloway says about crisis, where it's like, have your top guy or gal deal with it. Like, basically, usually, I mean, the CEO or whoever's really responsible. And in personal relationships, that's us. Something like be honest about what actually went wrong. And the third one is overcorrect. And I think that brings us to the next step, which is, something like overcorrect, or now you've apologized. There should be some thought that goes into what you do to make sure it doesn't happen again. Or as you were saying before, like trying to ensure that it doesn't happen. We're going to change something now. It's not going to fall into this thing of just like buying flowers every week, or saying I'm sorry, or shrugging it off as like this is the way I am, which maybe sometimes that's acceptable, but maybe sometimes it's not. And so I think that's the tricky part. What's going to change. It can be from the most extreme to like requiring a psychological intervention, or quitting alcohol, or something like that, right, to really stop a certain behavior. Or it can be something very much smaller, right, but just I'm going to change something to try to put some weight behind the apology, to really show that this is not just a monthly out of court settlement, but something is actually going to change.
So, but Fred, why is it then we overcorrect? Why isn't a correction enough?
I think there are a couple of things. One is you can almost view it like from a game theoretical point of view of like costly signaling. The more the process costs me, the less likely I am to do it again. If I get away without an apology, without looking in the mirror, without paying a price, it's like without going to jail, that in itself will just be less of an incentive for me not to do something again. Whereas if I make it more expensive for myself, that by itself will be, kind of part of the incentive structure and the curbs I put into my own life to as a guide, and then it will guide my behavior. So I think that's part of it. I think it also shows, for example, when now I'm thinking about like companies with customer service complaints or something like that. If they overcorrect, it shows that they're not going to make a habit of this. This doesn't happen very often. This is an out of the ordinary outcome, so we can take an out of the ordinary action.
See, it's interesting because I would find, so again, because an apology is a two-way street, right? It's two parties hypothetically. So one person's overcorrecting, part of their incentive to curb that behavior, buying jewelry, that was really expensive, so I'm definitely not going to make that mistake again. But then it's almost like on the other party is almost like, oh, I'm are you going to do it again? Actually, maybe I don't mind if you do it again, if I'm going to be rewarded for your mistakes.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Right. And that's it's because it comes back to the essence of an apology is meant to be, hey, let's, forgive, reflect, and then forget. Maybe not just straight forgive and forget.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I think of this as like almost a, because I love this idea of overcorrection, because we're all guilty of it, whether it be saying sorry 50 times or buying something to overcorrect. But what does that signal to the other person?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I think it's a couple of things. The first one is in favor of doing it that way, that it replaces something bad with something good. So there's this incident, and instead of thinking about the negative thing and how it started, you think about the positive thing and how it ended. It makes the silver lining bigger. It ended up with flowers and a nice dinner, and you get to think of that whole episode. I guess we're programmed to remember the endings of things. So if you can make it end nicely, you can say that, yeah, something good came out of this. We actually became stronger, or it's just something to remember it in a positive light, so that when your mind is brought back to it, it's also brought back to the positive outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, you can fall into some bad patterns, as you're saying, like, oh, am I going to get a gift out of this? Some people get into a bad habit of just complaining about everything as a way to, put other people on the back foot or to get something out of it. And of course, that's it's not right. And hopefully the first part of the apology of going through what actually went wrong, and if someone did something wrong on purpose, or really broke the trust, or faulted the other person in some way, should resolve that, to say, like, no, on this occasion I don't believe I did anything wrong. I couldn't have done anything differently, and I wouldn't do anything differently if it happened again.
I love that. I think what you just said there kind of scares me in a way, because you're right. Like, we sometimes want to just remember the ending and not the beginning. We and it's so there's a, sorry, one of the randomest examples, my sister and I were chatting about relationships and how things can build up over time, right? And if a person's not just open and honest with themselves and their partner early doors, there's a likelihood that something's going to explode for an unknown reason. She used the example of like Thai food. And she's like, her ex was like, yeah, she's like, oh, let's order Thai food. And he was like, all right, cool. Let's order Thai food. Yeah, all right, cool. And eventually they were having an argument one time, and he's like, yeah, and you always want to order Thai food. I don't like Thai food. And like, Thai food's like, and it's like, well, then why didn't you say something from the start? Like, why did you just almost like, why'd you just, why were you so passive? And I feel that it's, people just being real with themselves. And it's tough, man. Like, we all love rewards, and we all love like happy endings, like you said. And, to do the hard work, especially when it comes to an apology, just in a relationship, if we keep it that simple, it requires work. Why are you stronger as a result of this? Are you stronger because now you have a nice incentive? Or are you stronger because you truly understand something and you're not going to manipulate or trigger your partner? I mean, I'm sorry, man. I keep thinking about like cheating. Like, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I cheated. You've broken the trust, but it's like, but you know what? Like, I promise I'll never do it again. Look, here you go. And it's like, but why did you cheat on me in the first place? Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, it always jumps straight to the action and not the root cause, and understanding why that root cause affected both people in that relationship, and having that open conversation earlier, rather than waiting till the volcano erupts and then you've got to, go into disaster relief.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's right. And so I take from that is, dealing with small things directly makes it much less painful. But we put these things off, and they build up, and then you get the big blow up, and then it's like the Thai food comes up, but like, hand on heart, was it really ever about that? Or,
Exactly.
so then it all gets very confusing, and you got to bring up 5 disparate things at once, and it's unclear what's just a clever argument and what's really, the heartfelt cause of things. That's, I think, the problem with the bigger arguments, right? It becomes very confusing.
Yeah, and that's what it's like. It's just communication. It's that release valve.
Yeah.
Communication.
And you also get into this thing of like, someone says, well, you did this and it feels shit, and the other person says, well, you did this, and it's also, it's not the same resolution. where
Oh,
two wrongs don't make a right.
escalation.
Like, you shit on the floor over there, well, you shit on the floor over there. Doesn't change the fact that there's like now, shit everywhere in this in this
Did shit hit the fan?
metaphor.
Yes. And
Yeah.
you shat there and there. So there's shit everywhere.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, who's going to clean this up?
Exactly. Yeah. Where are we going to start? Who's going to
Yeah,
clean it up? And how are we going to prevent it from happening again? You don't get away from that
I
if you
agree.
want to have an ongoing relationship with someone.
No, I agree. I agree with that. So overcorrect, I kind of took a step 3. What would you say? Where would you want to take it from
Well, I think Scott Galloway's crisis management was about overcorrect. I
Yeah.
think here it's about, I would split it into 2 parts. One is, to the extent that you can, honestly and appropriately ensure that it's not going to happen again. That's the practical resolution. And then maybe there is some symbolic compensation, that just leaves the good taste in someone's mouth. And then they feel both fundamentally that it has been rectified and something thoughtful was done to, put a bow around the whole thing, which I think is an appropriate analogy, because it could be something like a gift, or, making an effort in an area where typically you don't, and just showing that type of, it's something like a gift. A gift of service, or whatever it might be, right? Whatever that person would appreciate.
I love that. A practical resolution or a symbolic resolution.
I'm saying both.
Yeah, no, sorry, say again?
I'm saying both. A practical
Yeah, no.
resolution and a symbolic.
Yeah, no. Oh, so okay, sorry. No, so it wouldn't be just one or the other. It's actually both.
I think together they become the overcorrection.
Got it. Together they become the overcorrection. So would you say one is sufficient versus another, or is it both lead to?
I think the practical is the more important thing.
Yeah,
If I through aggression made someone fearful, or I did something inappropriate, being practical about how that's going to happen less or not happen, that's the real rectification, where they next morning when they wake up and they think about it, they feel reassured, they feel better, because this discussion was had and a new promise was made. And then, if there are fresh flowers in the kitchen, it's kind of, what makes them smile and what makes them remember the whole thing in a positive light.
Makes sense. I got you. That I love that. That's fair. So it's like the practical resolution could be that's sufficient. Like that's what was needed.
Yeah.
Symbolic is now the over, going above and beyond to symbolize. Okay, love it. Clear for me.
Yeah.
No.
That's the architecture. Those are the steps, I believe.
So let's take a look back. So we have the first one, which is, hey, in a relationship, partnership, 2 friends, a couple, harm was done, potentially an apology is due. And I say potentially for a reason, because maybe it's not due. And that's part of just, if yes, it's due, you reflect on it, you're then able to be apologetic. Or if it's not, you can understand it and carry on. You get into that second step, which is understand the situation to apologize. And it's like, it goes back into that kind of that internal reflection on both sides. And I love how you mentioned the cop outs, like cop out, are you going to forgive me? Or you get that gift. And you then said it's be honest about it. Like there's no need maybe for a cop out. But how you then leading to step 3, you potentially overcorrect to almost kind of symbolize it's not going to happen again. I'm just going to pause there, because I just, how not to say on ending on that note, I've now forgotten the beginning, just to recap that, but I feel like it's all about, don't just forgive and forget. It's you really do need to forgive, or maybe, sorry, it's reflect, forgive, and maybe not necessarily forget. I don't know how do you think the resolution should land?
Maybe there's an opportunity to make things stronger, right? There is this thing about when you break a bone and it heals, it becomes stronger in that place. I think that can happen with relationships as well. As you get to know someone, in the beginning, the parts are kind of just all over the place. And then you learn something, And I think you mentioned something as well about like being triggered, right? And that can be like, I am this way. Maybe I'm a little bit sensitive to this, but I'd really appreciate if you'd be considerate of that. And maybe that's not too much to ask. Maybe it is. And then you learn more about each other. And then when someone afterwards is noticeably considerate of that particular, sore spot, then things have actually gotten better than they were before. And this thing was just a little, uh, something maybe that had to happen because there was no way to spot this in advance, right?
No, I agree. I think, yeah, and that's why I think about manipulation and how in certain relationships, well, first off, we shouldn't be manipulating. It's bad.
Mm.
And it's weird because I think sometimes people do it actively and some do it passively, but
Yeah.
I think it's that, am I doing this and apologizing? And, because it's great that bone can break and can heal stronger. But if you're targeting that bone over and over again and you're manipulating it, then it's under false pretenses.
Yeah.
And your intentions are flawed. Your intentions aren't genuine. And I think that's when when things get a bit shady.
Yeah.
And then the other point I thought about is like, is that apology truly due? And if it's not due, it's okay. I think it's just that matter of understanding it, which leads me to the last point, which I've got, which is, communicate. So it's like communicate, reflect, communicate, understand that sore spot. And if it's real, if it's a genuine apology, a genuine resolution to where you and your partner have landed, then thumbs up. If it's not a genuine landing or resolution, if it's symbolic, hopefully you've got that, I'm going to say that clarity to almost go, hang on a second. No, this isn't right for me. It's not that I demand or want more than an apology, but it's like, I want something real. I think sometimes we almost kind of are willing to trade that real for something fake. Not to say it's a fake jewelry. Ideally, it's real jewelry and real gold. But yeah, I think we what are we willing to trade our values for? Because I think then it boils down to your value. Like if you value authenticity and that behavior, that trait of trust and honesty, then you really need to be honest with yourself.
Yep.
Yeah. Architecture of an apology. Man, what's funny, Fred, is recently, because I'm someone who used to say sorry a lot. Anytime now where I'm about to apologize, I kind of go, hang on a second, pause. Like, have I done something wrong? Does this really require an apology? And I've actually found myself reducing the number of times I apologize. And partly because when I apologize, I want it to mean something.
Yeah.
And so I think it's something that's been on my mind. So I think this was a real interesting conversation for me to even understand my intentions, my apologies.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Any other closing thoughts from your side, Fred?
No, I think that was it.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, Fred, I really appreciate it. Architecture of an apology, the AAA. Thank you again for your time, bud. I look forward to chatting with you on our next topic soon.
As always, great to talk to you. Have
Likewise.
A wonderful day.
Hey, you too, bud. Hey, to all of you from Live, Breathe, and Believe, this is Anil and Fred signing out. Share with us your thoughts, your comments, your concerns. Even if you disagree with us, if you say, hey, hang on a second, I think differently about an apology, we'd love to hear what you think. Take care, everyone.